Hello everyone and welcome to Lumos. My name is Gilbert Gertner, I'm the president of Lumos. And today I want to put this video together to answer some of the questions that come to us all the time. People keep asking me, what is the difference and what we do at Lumos? What is the methodology, is the teacher, is the material, is the books? What makes Lumos different of the other schools? And I want to, on this video today, answer three questions. First, what methodology we adopt at Lumos? Second, why we did this and how does this apply? And the third question is, what is the practical application of this methodology in class? I cannot do this by myself. I will need to ask other people to help. And you will be meeting today some of the people that work behind the scenes, developing the curriculum, teaching the curriculum, and also verifying if the curriculum is being applied correctly. Let's talk about the methodology. What is methodology? Methodology is nothing more than the approach, is how the teacher delivers the teaching to the student. Several different methodologies have been developed during the last few years. For example, if you enroll in a class or a program where you need to repeat aloud several times and add different words, this neurolinguistics or repetition. This is a methodology very much used when you learn English outside the United States. So you're not immersed in that. When you're immersed in the culture in the United States and everybody speaks English outside your classroom, the best methodology is CLT, Communicative Language Teaching. Okay, let me give you the definition of the CLT or Communicative Language Teaching. Say the following. The focus of this method is to enable the learner to communicate effectively and appropriately in the various situations she or he would be likely to find himself. The content of CLT courses are functions such as inviting, suggesting, complaining, or notions such as expressing the time, quantity, and location. And they say more. Interactions, authentic communication, and negotiating meanings. This is the focus of the CLT, creating real situations and practice. So the student doesn't need to be too concerned about understanding every single word, translating every single word, but he needs to understand what is happening, what is the context of that. Also say this, students will understand English through active student interaction, role play, games, information, etc. We believe that when this methodology, the students are more engaged, are applying what they learn immediately to communicate. And that is one of the big success that we have in our classes today. Once we have selected the methodology, now comes to the hard part. How do we put a curriculum together that follows this methodology? I want to introduce to you the person behind this whole process. This Tamis, and Tamis was the one that for the last 11 years have been putting together all the content, all the material that is aligned on the CLT. Tamis, it's with you now.
Thanks, Gilbert. So now that you know what CLT is, you might be thinking, why is it so effective? And what does it look like? Well, let's talk about that. At Lumos, our priority are our students. And with CLT, we can create a student-centered methodology. The teachers here at Lumos are facilitators to help our students not only learn English inside of the classroom, but to be able to communicate outside of the classroom with confidence and success. CLT uses various techniques and approaches to teaching English. It's not limited to one form of teaching, which is different. For example, our teachers here can use role-playing, or they can use games, or presentations, or projects. All of these are at the disposal of our teachers to really teach the exact way that the students can communicate inside and outside of the classroom. Let's go over to our wonderful coordinators and teachers to learn about the application of the CLT.
So with communicative language teaching in the classroom, what we're trying to achieve is getting the students to produce language, to show what they've learned, to demonstrate their skill in class. And we do that for all of our subjects. So for instance, for reading, students are going to read, and that doesn't seem like it's very active, but actually it can be, because we want the students to engage with the texts. That means that they not only read it, but they discuss the text with their peers in class and with their teacher. They create questions or create discussions based on, or debates based on the reading. And they're going to read various kinds of texts, things like magazine articles or academic articles. Journalism is something that we do in one of our classes, where they look at a news article and discuss that with their peers in class. For writing, we ask that the students write, and that also doesn't seem like that's a very communicative task, but in getting ready to write and also in finishing writing, there's a lot of communicative activities. For instance, at the beginning of writing, you can brainstorm activities where you think about with your peers what you're going to write so that you're ready to write. After you've written, you can do things like peer review, where you talk together with people in your class about what you've written and get some feedback. You can also get feedback from your teacher in class, talking together about things that you've written. For listening, we are looking for a lot of different skills. One of the main skills that we're looking at when students are taking listening is how to make notes. That also doesn't seem very active, but once the student has taken notes, then the student can compare their notes with a partner, and they can use those notes to build discussion questions or to discuss what they've heard with other people in their class. In listening, we're trying to listen for both the main ideas and for details. We can also discuss the listening transcripts with our teacher and with groups in class to try to understand what we've listened for, but also what we've missed in listening. Speaking is a really big part of what we do at Lumos, and that's the main part of communicative language teaching. And as you've seen, we're speaking in all of our classes, but particularly in speaking class, we're trying to focus on pronunciation and speaking skills for fluid conversation. So one of the main things that we do in listening class is we have students create presentations. And they can create presentations with partners or with small groups. And they're doing these presentations on both academic topics and everyday topics. This gives students an opportunity to speak in front of the classes and to get feedback from their peers about how they're speaking, so that they can understand how well they're pronouncing things and how well they may not be pronouncing things, and also to get feedback from their teachers. Next, we're going to hear from a couple of our teachers about how they apply communicative language teaching in the classroom. We're going to hear first from Kristen Newton, who teaches TOEFL, and then from Maddie Townsend, who teaches Level 201 listening and speaking class.
So in the higher levels, the challenges can be a bit different for communicative learning. A lot of the students that come into the higher levels, they've lived here for any time from between a few months to a few years. And the challenges are different because most of them have the basic foundations of English that they've learned in the lower levels, both in Lumos and just out in the world in the US. They've been engaging in practical conversations for years, some of them. Grocery shopping, going to restaurants, making American friends, and then building that foundation that Lumos gives them. In the higher levels, the strategy changes. It goes from basic conversational goals to more academic goals, moving in the direction of taking the TOEFL exam, entering an American university, potentially entering the American job market, or going home and entering international business in some form. So the standards change because the basic grammar is there, but building on that vocabulary, focusing on topics of discussion that are a bit more difficult, a bit more intellectual, building upon those foundations from the lower levels. Some of the challenges that they might face are getting comfortable with more complex sentences, more complex forms of communication. And then sometimes with pronunciation, it actually involves unlearning some old habits that we have to go in and fine tune and be a bit more specific. One of my favorite examples in higher level classes is when we're dealing with current events, we're getting the opportunity to apply TOEFL level vocabulary to a topic that's important to so many people, and it's relevant to both their lives in the US and what they've experienced at home. And it's the chance to really engage with a topic that they might not be able to under ordinary circumstances. It provides so much opportunity for their growth in their English ability, their ability to engage native speakers on a higher level of communication, in some ways a more meaningful level of communication. So I would say how we apply that in terms of my strategies in class, I'm very focused on both teamwork, discussion, presentation, kind of those three things. With the teamwork aspect, they're able to collaborate and work together and create sentences that might be better than what they would create on their own. Discussions are amazing because you hear ideas from so many different perspectives, depending on where each student came from and their background. And then just their ability to present and to speak with confidence. I'm excited to be a part of the team that's working to achieve that.
My approach with working with lower level students is understanding that the biggest thing that keeps them from speaking is fear of making mistakes. And I want to create a classroom that's as welcoming of mistakes as possible, because that's an essential part of the language learning process. So with lower language level students, a lot of our vocabulary is task oriented. So they're learning how to do things like go grocery shopping or go to the bank or things like that. And those experiences are taking place in conversations with other Americans, and that can bring a lot of feelings of nervousness to my students. So I keep that in mind as I'm lesson planning. One thing I like to do as I'm lesson planning is think about, what about this topic that we're discussing today are my students going to have opinions on? So sometimes I like to start the lesson with some clickbait material, like a meme or a video or something that will get them talking and thinking without necessarily worrying about the language they're using or how they sound. And I like to stay out of those conversations as much as possible, because then it gives the students the opportunity to talk and listen to each other. As they're doing that, I'm listening for language learning opportunities where we can segue into some new vocabulary or a grammar principle that will help them express themselves better. One of my favorite activities is creating a problem-solving dialogue, and I'll give you an example. So last semester was the beginning of the COVID shutdown, and many students were complaining that they could not find toilet paper anywhere. So I thought, great, let's turn that into a lesson. Let's do an activity. So I put students in groups and had them imagine that they were going to the supermarket to look for toilet paper, and they needed to find an associate to help them. I asked them to imagine this conversation, what that would be like, what problems they might come up against, what vocabulary they needed, and had them write down the conversation and then practice with each other. This is a great opportunity for them to practice that task-based language, but also practice problem solving and maneuvering through mistakes as they're using the English language. Another one that we've done is ordering food at a restaurant, but the waitress doesn't understand you. A lot of my students complain that they know the grammar, they know the vocabulary, but they can't seem to get people to understand them when they speak. So by practicing these things in our class, we're helping them work through those problems before they step out of the classroom into the real world, so to speak, where they're speaking with other Americans. And by piloting and problem solving those things first, it builds their confidence in not only their language skills, but their problem solving skills. So that's my approach with lower level students.
Well, I want to thank you all that participate in this video, Tammy's, Jennifer, Maddie, and Kristen. And to you that is watching this today, now you know the secret of Lumos, our methodology, our teachers, our program, and how do we use this to teach English to you. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please send it to us. Don't forget to subscribe our channel and share this video with your friends. Thank you once again from Salt Lake City, and see you next week.